It's time for your daily dose of all things Chicago sports. This is the Daily Score. Now, here's your host, Mark Grote.
Been quite a day out here at Hallis Hall. I'm Mark Grote. Welcome into the Daily Score. And if you have not heard the headlines of the Bears day, Matt Eberflus is retained as head coach of the Bears. He stays on as the head coach. For how long, we do not know, but Matt Eberflus remains the Bears head coach. Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, was fired, as was Andrew Janocko, the quarterback's coach. He is out. Tyke Tolbert, the wide receivers coach, he was fired as well. And Tim Zetz, the assistant tight ends coach, was fired as well. Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach, does get to stay on in his job with the Chicago Bears. So let's get into it. We heard from Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and even Kevin Warren. So we're going to go through some of this stuff in rapid fire to answer what I thought were some of the most important questions that were asked, answers that you would like right now. There'll be so much to discuss, but this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what is going on at Hallis Hall right now. We'll start with Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, and why he made the decision to keep his head coach, Matt Eberflus.
Everything I talked about in the beginning, just in terms of his leadership and stability, I really think that the head coach needs to be able to captain the ship when the seas are when the seas have storms and really keep everything settled. When you go through hard times and he can keep everyone together, to me, that's like the critical piece in a market like this. Like, you have to be strong. I mean, if he's jumping off the boat and everyone else starts jumping off the boat, it's a hot mess. So the stability was a big piece of it. The detail that he coaches with, taking some of the mistakes from the game, bringing them to practice, and making sure that we're doing things the right way. I saw a lot of progress in that. There's a reason why we went from 3 to 7 wins. The player aspect of it is important, but also the detail and bringing the team together and sticking through those hard times allowed us to push through. And you saw a lot of those wins happening towards the back end of the season. If it's not for him, I really don't think that's the case. I think it starts to crumble. Everyone starts to do their own thing. So to me, that was a critical piece in this.
Well, obviously, this is something that Ryan Poles has been talking about all season long, and it seems to me that the number one thing that he values in a head coach is that ability to lead, and as he has been saying all year, to lead through adversity and showing that you can deal with a market like this. I probably would love to hear more about what he likes about Matt Eberflus, the tactician, the head coach, the offense, the defense, the special teams, but that's what Ryan Poles values. Let's move on to Ryan Poles and specifically on QB1, Justin Fields, and squaring that with, again, having the number one overall pick.
In terms of our process, I know there's going to be a lot of questions on Justin. There's going to be a lot of questions on the draft process. We are in information gathering mode right now. We are going to turn every stone to make sure that we are going to make a sound decision for our organization. I did think Justin got better. I think he can lead this team. But at the same time, there's a unique situation where I have to look and our staff has to look at everything. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And that's the same with free agency. We're going to look at our free agents, get with my personnel staff, do evaluations, and again, make the best decision we can for this organization to take the next step.
So we saw the improvement for sure in Justin Fields. I'm going to say about Ryan Poles the same thing I said about Matt Eberflus. It looked to me like Ryan Poles was looking for reasons to keep Matt Eberflus. That's what I said before they retained him, and they did retain him. I think Ryan Poles is looking for reasons to keep Justin Fields. I think in his heart, he wants to bring Justin Fields back. But he said what he said, and that is that they're in a unique situation with Caleb Williams and Drake May. Didn't name check them, but I am. And that's who he is referring to for sure. And who knows what other quarterbacks in the draft they may like as well, because there's a lot of first-round quarterback talent in this draft. So let's further this question with Ryan Poles now. What would it take to move on from Justin Fields?
Yeah, I'll actually go back to last year, and I got to stay open-minded about it, but I really, not to use the same quote, but when I say I need to be blown away, it's the same setup because, seeing the things that Justin did this year, his ability to make plays, Coach talked about some of those improvements, keeping his eyes down the field, taking less sacks, see a lot of growth there where he can continue to get better. So I'll have the same mindset. Someone needs to really show that they, can. And it's not just the film. Like, I need the person. Like, there's a whole process here that we have to figure out. But what we're going to do is do what's best for the organization. I'm sure there's going to be, similar situations in terms of the trade back. And I got to weigh all of those things to see what's going to help our team take the next step.
Yeah, and that is what he went into it with last year. Obviously, Ryan Poles probably missed on C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud turned out to be a difference maker this year. So if somebody blows him away this year, then he would move on from Justin Fields. So that is something that we're going to have to wait and see. I will say that one thing that Ryan Poles did make clear without making a big deal about it was that he, of course, is open to discuss trading the number 1 overall pick. I mean, I know that that's probably obvious, but he said if people call, he'd be willing to listen on that number 1 overall pick. Last thing on Justin Fields from Ryan Poles is, where does Justin Fields need to improve?
The 2-minute part, that's a critical part that we got to continue to get better at because that's where you win games and more games, close games. And a lot of times when you look at the playoffs and championships, that's where you close it out.
Yeah, kind of the same. I mean, he didn't talk about the release, getting reading defenses, getting rid of the ball more quickly, but he goes right to the 2-minute. And I agree that that's a part that has to get better. You never felt like when the Bears were down and Justin Fields had the ball in the final minutes of the game that they were going to turn it around. So that's something that still needs to sprout in Justin Fields' football career for him to be somebody that you look at as a top 10 quarterback in this league. All right, to Matt Eberflus, just a brief departure from Ryan Poles, and then we'll get right back to Poles. Matt Eberflus was up there, and the question for him was, why did you fire your offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy?
Yeah, just the growth and development of the offense. To me, needed to be better than what it was. And to me, you look at the passing game. Certainly, that's one aspect of it, and that's where it is. And we decided to move on from that. And again, that was my decision. Obviously, conferring with Ryan and George and Kevin, and we made that decision this morning.
So there you go. Matt Eberflus, that was his decision to make, as he said. And, you can't argue with it either. This is something that we anticipated. In terms of Getsy being fired, it's always the offensive coordinator that's got to go in this organization, which never seems to have offense. So, again, a Bears offensive coordinator has been fired. A little bit of business now with Ryan Poles. I think you will like what Ryan Poles is about to say now about where things are with a potential contract extension with Jaylon Johnson.
We have really good communication. The big thing was just kind of take a break here after the season, and then we'll start talks again. I feel really good about that situation. Jaylon's not going to go anywhere, and we'll work through it to get something done.
All right, we'll work through it and get something done. He's not going anywhere. So one way or another, whether extension, franchise tag, Jaylon Johnson will be with the Chicago Bears next year. My gut is that there will be an extension that gets done. That's what I heard today. All right, last 2 cuts are from Kevin Warren. Everybody's been wanting to hear from him. He did an introductory statement, just as Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus did. One of the big things that he discussed was, in a very sort of ferocious way, was that he is not patient. He is not a patient man, which would suggest that he wants things to get better quickly. But the Bears kept things pretty status quo. They obviously fired the offensive coordinator and some of the offensive coordinator's assistants, but the GM stays, the head coach stays. Personnel is what it is right now. So what about that, Kevin Warren, that not a lot of big changes were made despite your lack of patience?
I think the way I wrap my brain around it is that fortunately I've been here. And you go back to my first job in the NFL, I mean, my first year in the NFL, we were 5-11 at the St. Louis Rams. Second year, we were 4-12. And then the third year, we ended up going 16-3 and winning the Super Bowl. And I remember many of those days having conversations with John Shaw, our president, Jay Zigmont, our executive vice president, and Coach Vermeil, is that the questions that I would ask them of making sure the worst thing you can do on an organization that is making progress is to turn around too quickly. And you have to evaluate honestly. And so I just feel here with the people that we have in this building, the changes that we've started to make today, the people that we will hire, the core group of players that we have, the draft capital that we have, the salary cap situation that we're in, the free agents. I mean, just look what is accomplished. I firmly believe, go back 12 months ago and look at the progress that we've made. And so once you feel like, yes, you're not where you want to be, we're not where we're going to be, but we're pointed in the right direction. The key is having the right places, the right people in the right places, doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons. And that's what I'm focused on. So this is reminiscent of the process that we went through in St. Louis. It's reminiscent of the process we went through in Minnesota. 6-10, 8-8, 10-6, 12-4. And there were many a times that we were in meetings and that we would say, we're not making enough progress too quickly. And we would have to take a step back and say, but are we on the right track? Do we have the right people? And are we focused on the right things? And as I sit here today, unequivocally, I believe that we have the right set of individuals. And my expectations going into this season are extremely high. They're always the same, that we need to win the NFC North. That's where we should be. And so we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that that's not a word of hope, but it also is reality. And it starts with making sure you have the right culture, but it also starts with making sure you get really good players in here. And I think everyone would attest to the fact that the acquisitions that we made last year in the draft and in free agency is really positive. And I'll tell you this, having rookies play, that's one of the things that impressed me about Matt. Many coaches will not play rookies or they're shy away from it. But having those rookies play, you saw it toward the end of the year, that is going to play major dividends, not only next year, but also into the future.
And I think, look, we've heard Ryan Poles say it for the last 2 years plus now that you got to win championships, win the North. This is the year, and Kevin Warren, you just heard him say it there too. If there isn't the jump to something similar to that this year, then there has to be changes. So we shall see how that turns out. But no big changes made as of right now. Last thing for now from Kevin Warren. A lot of questions about the new stadium and where it might be. He did not specify, didn't come close to specifying it, made it sound like everything is open from Arlington Heights to Chicago. And to that end, what about, Kevin Warren, what about the South Lot?
Intrigues me about it's not necessarily the South Lot. What intrigues me about downtown is I strongly believe Chicago is the finest city in all of the world. I mean, very rarely do you get an opportunity to have such a beautiful downtown with a vibrant business community, with an absolutely beautiful lake and the energy that goes along. And so I always focus on, what's a way that we could, bring together the beauty of the lake, the beauty of downtown, the business community, all the art exhibits to bring that together for an environment. Because it's always about the fans. How can we create an environment that they really enjoy? And not only on our game days, but also from art, from food, just from music. And I live downtown. I love the city, and I just think we're blessed to be able to live in a city like Chicago. And so it has many pluses, and so I'm just a big proponent of the Chicagoland area. I'm a big proponent of Arlington Heights, but there's something that's really special about downtown Chicago.
Yeah, I love hearing him say that, because in an ideal world, they'd be able to build a big, nice, new, beautiful stadium in downtown Chicago. That would be my choice. I don't think that's going to happen. But it was nice to hear that kind of stuff. Few other things. I mean, there's so much, but a few other things personnel-wise. Talked about Jaylon Johnson, probably going to get his extension. Ryan Poles said he's happy with Braxton Jones, the left tackle, said conceded their injuries, but he didn't rule out competition at left tackle if that's a direction that they end up going in. Ryan Poles said what I said, and I think a lot of us have said, that the Green Bay loss at the end of the season showed that they are not there yet. I told you that the number one pick probably is for sale. Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus both will work closely together on hiring the offensive coordinator and assistants and maybe even a defensive coordinator. Sounds like I think that they will hire a defensive coordinator, and Matt Eberflus will not have to worry about that next year. That's just what I'm inferring from what they were saying. And Ian Cunningham, the assistant GM of the Bears, is definitely interviewing for other jobs. Don't know if he will go, but they are all for it in terms of allowing him to do that if you so desire. So that is it for today on the Daily Score. I feel like we were just getting started, but that's the snapshot. That's the nuts and bolts. Stay tuned right here at the Daily Score for more on the Chicago Bears. For our executive producer, Ray Diaz, I'm Mark Grote for the Daily Score.